Welcome to this video where I'm going to explain to you the upcoming 2026 Championship Series Cup meta, or also known as the EUIC meta. This might ring a bell to you because we also had a Championship Series Cup in November. That was for the LASC, the Latin America International Championship. This one is for the Europe International Championship. I think the meta is really good. There's a wider variety of Pokemon that is very usable here. There's hardly any alignment-based matchups, which I really like. But I'm also not going to pretend that the Go Battle League is like fun right now because, yeah, we got an interlude season without any proper explanation. Views on Twitch, YouTube, maybe TikTok, I don't know, are at like an all-time low. I've hardly been streaming and making videos, as you may have noticed. But the Europe International Championship is going to be the largest tournament by far to date. It has about 500 people registered currently. So to me, it's pretty exciting to see what's going to be good here. And you can be part of it by playing it in the Go Battle League as well if you're not competing at EUIC. The Championship Series Cup format will be there for 2 weeks. This is basically what's allowed and not allowed. You have Bug, Dark, Normal, and Dragon-type Pokemon. Fighting, Flying, and Steel are not eligible, and Pokemon with like Rock typings are also banned. Fairy typings are banned. You only really have Grimmsnarl as the Fairy type Pokemon that you can use, and then there's also some wild cards such as Seaking, Politoed for some reason, Milotic, and Frostless. Legendary Pokemon, Mega Pokemon, Mythical Pokemon, Ultra Beast, they're all not allowed. If you want to know what's good in the Go Battle League, it's easy. Go to beefpoke.com and you can just kind of see it there. It says Spidops here is at the top. I don't think Spidops is actually that best Pokemon in the Go Battle League. I think it's going to be Lickilicky because it's hardly countered. And Spidops is very neutral in a lot of matchups. It can debuff all over the place. But it's also the Pokemon that is very easy to counter through rollout users or Poison-type Pokemon such as Ariados. You have Dragulch. And it doesn't really hard counter a lot besides any Dark-type Pokemon. But Dark-type Pokemon, like Umbreon, for example, are just hardly being used. So I feel like Lickilicky is probably the Pokemon that you kind of want to target. There's also Dunsparce that has valuable coverage in Drill Run and Rock Slide, but it's just kind of slow. Here are some examples of teams that you could run. Lickilicky is just one of the best Pokemon, and I really would recommend that if you're taking it serious, it's probably the Pokemon you want to run because it's just so easy to swap in Lickilicky into a matchup, soak up damage. And the thing that you also see, by the way, on PvPoke is that the recommended moveset is Body Slam and Earthquake. I think for the Go Battle League, you might want to consider Shadow Ball because I think a Pokemon such as Spiritomb or Frostless might actually be more viable than in the Show 6 series. And Shadow Ball, even without the same type attack bonus, is more efficient than Body Slam is. So you might see more Lickilicky than you might think with Shadow Ball. Earthquake is only really necessary for Dragulch because like Drapion faints to Body Slam plus Rollouts anyway. You don't really need it there, and if an Earthquake gets shielded, it actually becomes a really bad matchup for Lickilicky as well. Now I'm going to talk more about the Show 6 format, where you have 6 Pokemon and you have to put a little bit more thought into your team building. If you are not into that, but you do want to notice for the Go Battle League, I'm still going to give a lot of valuable information that you might want to know. The way I like to see the EUIC meta is to divide it by typing. And I'm not saying that your team needs one of each typing. No, you can cook whatever. But most Pokemon of that typing fulfill the same role. All the Bug-type Pokemon do about the same. All the Dark-type Pokemon, they do about the same. The only typing that's a war zone is the normal type. Because you have your standard rollout users, Lickilicky, Miltank, Dunsparce. I do not recommend the Dunsparce, despite it having Body Slam. I think having the bulk of Dunsparce and the coverage of Drill and Rock Slide is better than Body Slam and than one of the two. Miltank, I think, is inferior because Ice Beam is just straight up worse than both Shadow Ball and Earthquake. Lickilicky generally prefers Earthquake in Show 6, just because I think having that ground attack threatening Drapion and Dragulch, which are quite common, is just more valuable than not being able to one-shot anything else than a Drampa as Miltank with its Ice Beam. What makes the normal typing so interesting is the anti-meta. You have Ferret with Quick Attack as a fast attack this time, not Sucker Punch, and Brick Break as secondary charge attack, which helps against other normal typing. And then you have Double as the other normal type with Double Kick as a fighting fast attack, and it just does really well into Pokemon like Lickilicky, Dunsparce, and Miltank. You have Wild Charge to threaten Seeking as well. And for these kind of normal type Pokemon, that's what you want your bug type Pokemon for, because bug type in this meta are just kind of annoying. I think the main ones you're gonna see, definitely Spidops, Rock Tomb, and Lunge is an insane moveset. I'm honestly surprised not even banned. Spidops is not impossible to counter though, so maybe it's not too overpowered. Ariados I think is really good. Not going to be super common, but it's gonna be around. The poison typing obviously helps resisting Spidops' Bug Bite. Spidops does not run Shadow Claw here because of so many normal and dark type Pokemon. And then the other bug type Pokemon you're likely going to see quite often is Beedrill. Beedrill with Bug Bite, a legacy fast attack, hits really hard. You can boost your attack with Fell Stinger. In Show 6, we do have an open team sheet though, so if someone sees you have Fell Stinger, they might actually not shield. And that's when you throw the Juron. So I also see Pokemon like Cricketune, Golisopod, Charjabug on PvPoke. I do not think that those are any better than the other bug-type Pokemon. Feel free to prove me wrong, though. Now, for the Dark-type Pokemon. The Dark-type Pokemon are wicked. On PvPoke, you see Sableye as one of the top Pokemon. An absolute lie. Because as the regular Sableye, 2 Foul Play will not knock out a normal-type Pokemon. You need a Shadow Sableye for that. But then Shadow Sableye is so fragile that one Shadow Ball is almost going to knock you out. It's just an uncomfortable Pokemon to use. Will not work with energy or shield disadvantage. And it loses to other Dark-type Pokemon. The other Dark-type that you have here are Drapion. I think Drapion is going to be a top usage Pokemon. I think Grimmsnarl. I hate Grimmsnarl. I will tell you soon why. And it's meta, by the way. I like the Pokemon. And Spiritomb, my personal favorite. I'll also tell you why. Shadow Drapion as a Dark-type Pokemon is probably the most neutral Pokemon in this meta. It basically cannot be counted. You have Zweilos and Crocodile, but dare to run that in a Spidops meta, I wouldn't. The thing with Shadow Drapion, and this is the tragedy of Pokemon Go really, is that you really want a bulk point against Spidops. And the bulk point means that you take 1 less damage from Bug Bite, which will allow you to get to 3 or maybe even more Crunch. And in that way, you can actually beat Spidops. Of course, since the last Rocket event, Scorpius Shadow is no longer in Team Go Rockets, and even if somehow you got one because I'm wrong, you cannot TM Frustration anyway. So I really hope you got one. I had to cut it off because I was getting upset with the design of that. Grimmsnarl, a Pokemon I really dislike in this meta, and I'll tell you why. The 0 shield against Lickilicky is so incredibly bad. The fairy type coverage is good, right? Just defensively already, you destroy Spiritomb. You're decent into dragon type Pokemon. Like, don't get me wrong, 2 Swift will still knock you out, if not 1 almost already. But 2 Body Slam from Lickilicky, like Lickilicky Body Slam is the one attack you don't want to shield. But if you don't do that in the 0 shields, Lickilicky wins with like 50% health. You don't want that. But Grimmsnarl I feel like is a high risk, high reward. I do think it's a very, very neutral Pokemon. So, you know, you can bring this. It's very safe. The other matchup it really hates, though, is Shadow Drapion. So whenever you see Shadow Drapion on an opposing team, I personally would not run Grimmsnarl unless I'm baiting out Drapion somehow. My favorite Dark-type Pokemon is Spiritomb. The reason why is because it counters the entire normal-type meta. It's good into Lickilicky, into Dunsparce, into Ferret. It annihilates Quick Attack Ferret. Like, Quick Attack Ferret is straight up unplayable into a Spiritomb team. It's good against Double, really good. And even into Shadow Drapion, you can win the 1 shield scenario. So that's why I really like Spiritomb, but boy, if you get that on a Grimmsnarl, yeah, it's not great, so be careful of that. Spiritomb is also quite flimsy. I don't think you get to 3 Rock Tomb into Spidops, but, you know, Rock Tomb coverage is very valuable. You will likely pull shields. Now, there's more Dark-type Pokemon. I think Umbreon is... I've used it before. I don't think it's bad, but the Spidops is scary. Same with Hisuian Samurott. It has Sacred Sword, actually, which allows you to defeat the normal-type meta as well. But again, Bug-types are scary. I think the more promising, spicy Dark-type Pokemon might be Tyranitar. But I think Tyranitar is also super prone to anything that has fighting or bug type coverage. But it can also really destroy entire teams. If you think of something like Dragon, Drapion, Grimmsnarl, and Spiritomb together, like that could be a team. Tyranitar is really good into that, but you basically feint to like a couple double kicks from Double, a Brick Break from Ferret. Let's not talk about the Spidops matchup. And even if you run Shadow Tyranitar, you almost feint to one Aqua Tail from Drapion. So Tyranitar really high risk, high reward. I think it definitely annihilates my teams, I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, you only have to bring one Spidops and Tyranitar goes down within seconds. And then the Dragon type meta, I don't think a Dragon is even necessary, to be honest, if you just want to go with bulk, because most of the Dragon here are quite fragile. I think Dragulch is the most unique one because you resist bug type attacks and you can opt between Dragon Tail and Acid. I think if you run Acid, you probably also want something like Grimmsnarl with it to protect it from other Dragon type Pokemon. As for the wildcard Pokemon, I think Frostless is probably very good in the Go Battle League, but Lickilicky, not knowing its second attack is very scary. I think it's also very prone to the many Dark-type Pokemon. But like with energy management, Frostless can always do something, really. The most promising one out of the wildcard is probably Seeking, a personal favorite of mine. But Seeking is very fragile to like if you core it with like Lickilicky, double becomes a problem quite quickly. But the coverage in the fast attack pack, Icy Wind and Duron is actually pretty wicked. It's super effective on multiple Pokemon, and if not, you debuff everything. The problem with Seeking is, though, keep in mind that this Pokemon straight up does not work when it's behind on energy, because it's pretty fragile. You usually need to debuff before you can actually hang on to 2 attacks, besides a Body Slam from Lickilicky, maybe. But yeah, it's not a Pokemon that works well behind energy. It's similar to Sableye, kinda. I'm just going to go over an example of teams, not going into the games themselves, but I played against Scafo in Battle Frontier, grassroots format. This is a format where you don't show the movesets, but it is the same UIC meta. And of course, I like to brag that I beat Scafo here because, you know, I like beating up my friends. No, I'm kidding, but this is kind of the only example that I had of most recent tournaments that I played. And as you can see here, I have Spiritomb, Drapion. That's kind of the core that I really like. They just pair really well together. I have Seeking as a wild card pick. I have Drampa for some reason. No, I had Drampa to cover the likes of Dragulch a little bit. And then I have Lickilicky and Spidops. That's just the top tier meta. And as you can see on Scafo's side, also Spidops, Lickilicky, Drapion. And then he has Double as anti-meta. He has Grimmsnarl to cover Dragons and Dragulch. Is interesting in this format because you can change the fast attack. Obviously, because I don't have a fairy type Pokemon, he runs Dragon Tail here. Besides the Drampa, I think you have 2 hard meta teams here. This is what you can expect for the UIC meta in Show 6. And Spidops, Lickilicky, Drapion, those 3 probably an absolute staple in the Go Battle League as well. I would say that Drampa and Double are like the only kind of off-meta here, but I would not be surprised if Double at the UIC is also going to be top 12 usage, because it can just be a really good anti-meta with neutral play into Drapion, good play into Lickilicky, and has Wild Charge for Seeking. So that's kind of how this meta and the teams are going to look like. That's about all I have for you about this EUIC meta. If you compete at the EUIC, I wish you the best of luck. I will be commentating myself, so I won't be playing it, but I'll be talking and yapping all over it with my comrades, Marto Galde, Landberger, and Speedy's Chief, and Tomo UK is also somewhere around there hosting or something. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, unfortunately, it's in an interlude season where there's really not much to get, but I think this is a great meta. You might want to try it out, even if it's just briefly. Thank you for watching. See you later.